Have you noticed that the hardest storms in life never announce themselves? They do not knock up on your door. They do not ask if you are ready. They arrive without warning, tearing through your peace, shaking everything you thought was secure, and leaving you standing in the middle of questions you never wanted to ask. One phone call changes everything. One betrayal shatters years of trust. One accusation stains a reputation you spent a lifetime building. One season of silence you wonder if anyone truly sees your pain. If you are listening to these words with tears hidden behind a smile, with exhaustion buried beneath your daily routine, with a heart that has grown weary from carrying burdens nobody else understands, then do not turn away. Stay with me because this message may be exactly what your soul has been waiting for. You may believe that your storm is too fierce, your wounds too deep, your disappointments too heavy, but hear this with every part of your being. Your story is not ending inside the storm. God has not abandoned you. God has not forgotten your name. God has not stepped away simply because the winds became stronger. What if the very storm that convinced you that you were alone is actually revealing that God has been closer than ever before? What if the darkness that frightened you is not evidence of God's absence, but proof that He is preparing a victory too great to be understood before its time? The enemy wants you to measure your future by your present pain. Fear wants you to believe that because the night has lasted so long, the morning will never come. But fear has always been a liar. Your circumstances may be screaming defeat, but God speaks louder than every circumstance. The voices around you may say, "It's over, give up, nobody is coming, nobody cares." Yet there is a voice greater than every voice of despair, and today it is calling your heart to rise again. You have survived days that you thought would destroy you. You have walked through nights when your own tears became your closest companion. You have endured betrayal from people you would have sacrificed everything for. You have been misunderstood by those who never took the time to know your heart. You have been judged by people who never fought your battles. Still, somehow you are here. That is not an accident. That is not luck. That is not coincidence. That is the unseen hand of God carrying you when your own strength had already disappeared. You thought you were holding yourself together, but it was God holding you together. You thought you had one last ounce of strength, but it was God breathing courage into a soul that was ready to collapse. Listen carefully, because this may change the way you see every painful chapter of your life. Storms do not have the final word. God does. The waves may rise, the winds may roar, and people may walk away, but none of those things have the authority to rewrite the purpose God has placed upon your life. The storm is loud, but God is greater. The storm is real, but God is stronger. The storm may surround you, but it cannot separate you from the one whose power reaches beyond every fear, every wound, every betrayal, and every impossible situation. Hold on just a little longer. Do not surrender your hope at the very moment when heaven is preparing a breakthrough you cannot yet see. The storm is not your destination. It is only the place where you will discover that God's strength is far greater than anything that has ever tried to break you. There is something that nobody tells you when life begins to fall apart. The deepest pain is not always the problem itself. Sometimes the deepest pain comes from discovering who disappears when your world starts shaking. There are people who celebrated you while the skies were clear, but the moment the winds grew violent, they quietly stepped away. There are people who promised they would never leave you, yet they vanished the very moment your strength began to fade. There are people who smiled in your presence, but questioned your character behind your back. Some even built their own comfort on top of your suffering. They misunderstood your silence as weakness. They misinterpreted your patience as surrender. They assumed that because you were struggling, God must have abandoned you. But they could only see the storm around you. They could not see the hand that was holding you within it. That is why you must never allow the opinions of people to become louder than the promises of God. Human voices change with circumstances. Human loyalty often depends on convenience. Human approval can disappear overnight. But God does not wake up one day and decide to stop being faithful. God does not change his mind because your situation has become difficult. The one who carried you through yesterday's impossible battle is still carrying you today, even if your emotions cannot feel his presence. You may be asking yourself a question that has echoed through your heart countless times. If God is with me, then why has this storm lasted so long? Why did he allow the betrayal? Why didn't he stop the false accusations? Why did he remain silent while I was breaking inside? Those questions do not make you weak. They reveal the weight you had been carrying. Yet notice something extraordinary. Every storm has a way of exposing what calm seasons can hide. When everything is comfortable, almost anyone can claim to have faith. It is easy to speak confidently when the bank account is full, when relationships are healthy, when doors are opening, and when life seems predictable. But storms reveal what comfort never can. They uncover the foundation beneath your feet. They expose the voices you have been trusting. They reveal whether your confidence was built upon changing circumstances or upon the unchanging character of God. Sometimes God allows the winds to remove every false support so you can discover that He alone has your true foundation all along. Think about how often fear tries to become your interpreter during difficult seasons. Every delay becomes permanent failure. Every closed door becomes the end of your purpose. Every painful memory becomes proof that nothing good will ever happen again. Fear has an incredible ability to make temporary pain feel like an eternal sentence. It whispers, "This is how your story ends. You will never recover. You will never smile the same way again. You will never trust anyone again." But fear speaks without authority. Fear predicts a future it cannot control. Fear magnifies the storm while shrinking your vision of God. Do not allow fear to narrate a story that belongs to God. The one who created your future is not intimidated by your present. The one who sees the end from the beginning has never been surprised by the chapter you are living today. Before the first cloud appeared over your life, God already knew every tear you would cry, every battle you would fight, every disappointment you would endure, and every victory He would bring out of what looked impossible. Perhaps the hardest part of your storm has not been the circumstances themselves, but the loneliness. You kept showing up while nobody noticed your struggle. You kept encouraging others while your own heart was quietly falling apart. You carried responsibilities with trembling hands because you believed that if you stopped moving, everything around you would collapse. You laughed when people expected you to laugh. You answered, "I'm fine." Because explaining your pain felt more exhausting than hiding it. Deep inside, however, there were nights when you wondered whether anyone truly understood what was happening inside your soul. Listen carefully to this truth. Your loneliness has never meant you were abandoned. Isolation may describe your circumstances, but it does not describe your relationship with God. Even when every human voice becomes silent, God's attention never leaves you for a single moment. While others only see your public smile, God sees every silent tear that falls where nobody else is watching. While others judge your actions without understanding your battles, God knows every unseen burden you have been carrying. While others measure your life by appearances, God measures your heart with perfect understanding. You have never cried a tear that escaped His notice. You have never whispered a desperate prayer that disappeared into emptiness. Every sigh, every question, every sleepless night has been witnessed by the one whose compassion never grows tired. That is why you must refuse to mistake silence for absence. Just because God is not working in the way you expected does not mean He is no longer working. The strongest roots grow beneath the surface where no one can see them. The greatest transformations often happen in places hidden from human eyes. Right now, while you are asking why nothing seems to be changing, God may be strengthening parts of your character that success alone could never build. He may be teaching you a dependence that comfort could never produce. He may be preparing you to carry blessings that would have crushed the version of you that existed before the storm. The process feels painful because growth often does. Yet, when you look back one day, you may discover that the season you begged God to remove became the very season that revealed His faithfulness more clearly than any other chapter of your life. So do not let go now. The storm may still be raging, but the God who carries you has never once been shaken, and He will not release His hold on you until He has safely brought you through every wind that rises against your life. There is another battle that almost nobody talks about because it happens where no one else can see it. It is not the storm outside you that threatens you the most. It is the storm that tries to build a home inside your mind. Long before people give up physically, many surrender internally. The moment your thoughts begin to agree with hopelessness, the storm starts claiming territory it was never meant to have. That is why the greatest battlefield is often your own heart. Every morning, you wake up with two voices competing for your attention. One says, "Nothing will change. You have already lost too much. Look at everything that has gone wrong." The other whispers, "Stand up again. God is still writing your story." This chapter is painful, but it is not permanent. The question is not whether those voices exist. The question is which one you will believe. Whatever you feed will become stronger. If you keep feeding fear, fear will become your lens. If you keep feeding disappointment, disappointment will become your expectation. But if you choose to fix your heart on the faithfulness of God, even while the wind is still blowing, something remarkable begins to happen. The storm may remain around you for a season, but it loses the power to control what is happening within you. The enemy does not always need to destroy your future if he can convince you to abandon it yourself. Think about that for a moment. He does not always need to close every door. Sometimes he only needs to make you believe that every door is already closed. He does not always need to remove your strength. Sometimes He simply whispers until you forget that God is your strength. This is why discouragement is so dangerous. It is slow, it is quiet, it does not arrive with thunder. It settles into your thoughts one sentence at a time. Why pray anymore? Why keep believing? Why keep trying? Nothing is changing. Those questions sound harmless at first, but if they are left unanswered, they begin to reshape the way you see your entire life. Before long, you stop expecting goodness. You stop looking beyond the pain. You begin making permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. Yet God is calling you to interrupt that cycle before it becomes your identity. You are not the voice of despair echoing in your mind. You are not the accusations spoken against you. You are not defined by the betrayal that wounded you or the rejection that tried to convince you that you were unworthy. Your identity is not built by the opinions of people. It is secured by the God who knew your name before anyone else ever spoke it. Remember the days when you thought one more disappointment would completely break you. Remember the nights when sleep refused to come because your mind replayed every painful conversation, every unfair accusation, every moment of rejection. You wondered if your heart would ever feel light again. You questioned whether joy belonged to someone else, but not to you. Yet somehow you survived. You are still breathing, you are still standing, you are still searching for hope. That is not because the storm showed mercy. Storms never show mercy. It is because God's mercy was greater than the storm's power. Every breath you took when your soul was exhausted was sustained by Him. Every step forward that felt impossible was strengthened by Him. Even when you believed your faith had become too weak, God's faithfulness never weakened. His commitment to carry you has never depended on the size of your courage. If it did, none of us would survive life's darkest seasons. He carries you because His character does not change. He remains steadfast when your emotions fluctuate. He remains faithful when your confidence rises and falls. He remains present when every visible sign seems to suggest otherwise. So stop measuring God's activity only by what your eyes can see. Some of the greatest works of God begin in complete silence. A builder lays the deepest foundation before anyone admires the finished structure. A seed grows unseen before anyone celebrates the harvest. In the same way, God often prepares His greatest answers beneath the surface of ordinary days, hidden behind delays that seem impossible to understand. You may think nothing is happening because you cannot yet see the outcome. But the absence of visible evidence is not the absence of God's work. While you are waiting, He is strengthening your patience. While you are weeping, He is shaping your endurance. Snorts. While you are wondering if you have been forgotten, He is arranging moments that will one day make you realize that not a single tear was wasted. One day, you will look back at the storm, not with bitterness, but with awe. You will realize that the waves that tried to drown your hope became the very place where you discovered how securely God was holding you. You will understand that when your own strength finally reached its limit, God's strength had only just begun to reveal itself. And on that day, you will no longer remember yourself as the person who was defeated by the storm. You will remember yourself as the one whom God faithfully carried through every single moment of it, never loosening His grip, never turning away, and never failing to complete what He had already begun in your life. One of the greatest deceptions the storm will ever whisper is this: because you cannot see the way forward, there is no way forward. That lie has imprisoned countless hearts. You stand at the edge of uncertainty, searching for answers, but every direction seems covered in darkness. You pray, yet the situation appears unchanged. You wait, yet the silence continues. You hope, yet another disappointment arrives. Slowly, without even noticing it, you begin to confuse God's silence with God's absence. But those are not the same thing. The silence of God has never meant the abandonment of God. There are moments when God speaks loudly, and there are moments when He works quietly. The loud moments encourage your faith, but the quiet moments mature it. Anyone can believe when miracles happen immediately. It takes a transformed heart to keep trusting when heaven seems silent. That is the place where your confidence is no longer resting on visible evidence, but on the unchanging character of God. The storm demands proof before it will let you have peace. God invites you to experience peace before the proof arrives. That is why your circumstances cannot be allowed to become your greatest authority. Circumstances change with the wind. God's faithfulness does not. Have you ever noticed that storms strip away everything that was never strong enough to remain? They remove illusions, they expose false foundations, they reveal relationships that were built only on comfort and convenience. Some people walk beside you only because your road was smooth. The moment your journey became difficult, they quietly found another path. Their departure wounded you because you believed they were permanent. But what if God allowed their absence because they were never meant to carry the weight of your future? Sometimes we grieve over people who walked away without realizing they'd already stopped believing in us long before they left. We spend months asking, "Why did they abandon me?" Snorts, while God is asking, "Why are you still trying to hold on to someone who already released their grip?" Every storm reveals who truly belongs in your life and who only belonged to a season. That revelation hurts because love always makes separation painful. Yet there is mercy hidden inside the pain. God will never allow temporary people to permanently destroy the purpose He has prepared for you. Their rejection may bruise your heart, but it cannot cancel what God has already decided. Their opinions may damage your confidence for a season, but they cannot rewrite the destiny that God continues to protect with His own power. There will also be moments when the greatest battle is not against the voices outside you, but against the accusations within you. You begin blaming yourself for everything that went wrong. You replay every decision, wondering if one different choice could have prevented all this suffering. You ask yourself whether you failed, whether you were too trusting, too forgiving, too patient, or simply not enough. Guilt becomes a prison with invisible walls. Regret becomes a chain that follows you into every new day. But listen carefully. There is wisdom in learning from yesterday, and there is destruction in living inside yesterday. God never intended your past to become the place where your future dies. The lessons of your pain are valuable, but the prison of your pain is not. Do not let yesterday become more powerful than the God who holds your tomorrow. The mistakes you made do not surprise him. The betrayal you experienced did not catch him off guard. The tears you cried did not disappear into emptiness. He has seen every hidden wound, every silent disappointment, every unanswered question. He knows the chapters you are ashamed to talk about, and still he has not withdrawn his hand from your life. That alone should remind you that your worth has never been measured by your worst day. So, I want you to make a decision that may feel impossible, but will change the direction of your soul. Refuse to let the storm tell you who you are. You are not the person people falsely accused. You are not the label placed upon you by those who never understood your heart. You are not the betrayal that broke your trust. You are not the failure that tried to define your future. You belong to the God whose strength is never exhausted, whose wisdom never fails, whose compassion never runs dry. If he has carried you through every painful day until this very moment, why would he suddenly stop now? The same hand that lifted you when you thought you could not stand is still beneath you today. Same God who gave you breath when despair surrounded you is still breathing courage into your weary spirit. Lift your eyes beyond the clouds. The storm may still be loud, but it is no longer the highest authority over your life. God's purpose stands above every wave. His promises rise higher than every fear. His power reaches further than every attack against you. Hold tightly to that truth, because the day is coming when the very storm that tried to convince you that you were finished will become undeniable evidence that God never stopped carrying you, not for a single heartbeat, not through a single tear, not through a single battle, and not through a single moment when you believed you were walking alone. There will come a moment in every storm when you reach the end of your own strength, not the kind of tiredness that sleep can fix, not the kind of exhaustion that disappears after a quiet weekend. I am talking about the kind of weariness that settles deep inside your soul, where even hope begins to feel heavy. You keep moving because you have responsibilities. You keep smiling because people expect you to be strong. You keep saying, "I'm all right," because you are tired of explaining a pain that words can never fully describe. Yet, when the day is over and the room grows quiet, you finally admit what you have been hiding from everyone else. You whisper, "God, I cannot carry this anymore." If that is where you are today, do not be ashamed of your weakness. Do not believe the lie that faith means pretending to be unbreakable. Some people think strength means never crying. Others believe courage means never feeling afraid. But real strength is found in the person who, after every disappointment, every betrayal, every unanswered question, still turns toward God instead of away from Him. That is not weakness. That is the deepest form of trust. When your own hands can no longer hold the weight, God's hands are more than enough. When your heart says, "I have nothing left," God says, "Then let my strength become everything you need." Perhaps you have been asking God to remove the storm while God has been preparing to transform you within it. That is a difficult truth to accept because none of us naturally welcome pain. We want immediate answers. We want instant breakthroughs. We want every difficult chapter to end the moment it begins. But imagine if every challenge disappeared the instant you prayed. Would you ever discover how deeply God can sustain you? Would you ever learn that His peace is stronger than panic? Would you ever realize that His wisdom is greater than your confusion? Some lessons cannot be learned in comfort because comfort never asks hard questions. Storms force you to examine where your confidence truly rests. They expose every hidden fear, every false security, every fragile expectation. Then, slowly and patiently, God begins replacing those broken foundations with something that cannot be shaken. You may not enjoy the process, process, but one day you will thank God that He refused to leave you unchanged. The storm that felt like destruction will be remembered as the place where your character became stronger than your circumstances. You will discover that God was not trying to weaken you. He was preparing you to carry a future that required greater endurance, deeper wisdom, and unshakable dependence upon Him. Never forget that storms have an expiration date even when they feel endless. The longest night still surrenders to the morning. The darkest cloud cannot stop the sky from clearing forever. Your emotions may insist that this season will last for the rest of your life, but emotions are not the architects of your future. God is. He has never written a story where pain was the only chapter. There is always another page. There is always another sunrise. There is always another opportunity for His faithfulness to become visible in ways you never expected. The danger is that many people walk away just before that page is turned. They surrender their hope moments before the breakthrough they had been praying for. They allow temporary disappointment to convince them that permanent defeat is inevitable. Do not make that mistake. Hold on even when your hands are trembling. Believe even when your eyes are filled with tears. Continue walking even when each step feels painfully slow. You do not need to understand every detail of God's plan in order to trust the one who is leading you through it. Your understanding has limits. God's wisdom does not. Your vision reaches only as far as today's horizon. God's vision stretches beyond every tomorrow you cannot yet imagine. One day the people who doubted you may witness a version of your life they never expected to see. Not because your goal is to prove them wrong, but because God's faithfulness cannot remain hidden forever. The same people who questioned your integrity may one day recognize the strength that suffering produced within you. The same voices that dismissed your future may become silent when they see what God has accomplished. But do not wait for that day in order to find peace. If your healing depends upon human recognition, your heart will always remain vulnerable. Let God become your validation. Let His approval become greater than public applause. Let His truth become louder than every accusation ever spoken against you. You do not need every person to understand your journey for your journey to have purpose. You do not need everyone to believe in you when the God who formed you has never stopped believing in the purpose He placed inside you. People's opinions rise and fall like the wind, but God's commitment to your life